What if you could plant something once and have it return year after year, saving you time, money, and the constant scramble to reseed every spring? Plant once and enjoy harvest for years. That's exactly what these 9 edible perennials are built to do. They aren't magic, but with a little planning, the right location, and basic care, each one will give you recurring food and value for seasons to come. If you want more low-maintenance garden tips like this, hit subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss future videos. Before we dive in, a quick note about what perennial means for edible gardening. These are plants that live for multiple years and come back on their own, unlike annuals that need replanting every season. Perennials can save effort long-term, but they also ask for long-term thinking, permanent beds, good soil, and sometimes containment. Climate, soil, and pests affect results, so harvest for years is realistic with proper care, not a promise that works the same everywhere. With that caveat, let's count down from 9 to 1, and for each plant I'll cover why to grow it, how to plant it, the minimum care it needs, when and how to harvest, one important caution or trick, and a quick question for you. 9. Rhubarb. Thick, jewel-toned stalks that make pies and jams sing. Rhubarb is a classic long-lived crown plant. Once established, a healthy crown can produce reliably for a decade or more. Planting basics. Choose a sunny spot or part shade in cooler climates, with fertile, well-drained soil amended with compost. Set crowns about 3 feet apart so each plant has room to spread. Plant the crown so the buds are just an inch or two below the soil surface. Care minimums. Keep the bed mulched to retain moisture and suppress weeds, and feed lightly with compost each spring. Harvest tip. Resist the temptation to cut stalks the first year. Let the plant establish, then harvest stalks in spring by pulling and twisting or cutting close to the crown, leaving several stalks and the leaves to keep the plant healthy. Important caution. Never eat the leaves. They contain oxalic acid and are toxic. Only the stalks are edible. Practical use and storage. Stalks freeze well or cook down into jams, pies, and compotes. Quick question. Have you ever tasted fresh rhubarb straight from the garden, or would you try it in a pie first? 8. Jerusalem artichokes. Sunchokes. Tall, sunflower-like stalks with knobby tubers underground that roast sweet and nutty. These are tough plants that tolerate poor soils and drought, and they can produce a surprising yield with minimal fuss. Planting basics. Plant tubers in early spring about 3 to 5 inches deep and roughly 12 to 18 inches apart in a sunny spot. They tolerate heavy soil but do best with some organic matter. Care minimums. Water regularly the first season to get them started, then they mostly look after themselves. Support may be useful if the plants get very tall. Harvest tip. Wait until after the first hard frost if you want a sweeter flavor. Frost converts some starches to sugars. And dig tubers carefully to preserve future shoots. Important caution. They spread readily and can become invasive if left unchecked, sending up shoots far from the original patch. Containment strategy. Plant them at the edge of the garden or in a dedicated bed, or in a large buried container to limit spread. Practical uses and storage. They're delicious roasted, pureed into soups, or pickled. Store in a cool, humid root cellar, or refrigerate in slightly damp sand. Quick question. Would you grow them in the ground for volume or in a contained bed to avoid surprises? 7. Chives. The little green bundles that keep giving and never quit. Chives are a true perennial herb that thrives in small spaces and containers, offering mild onion flavor, edible flowers, and a quick return on a one-time planting. Planting basics. Set clumps about 8 inches apart in full sun to part shade. They like good garden soil with steady moisture. Care minimums. Trim back frequently to encourage fresh growth, divide clumps every few years to keep them vigorous, and pot them easily if space is tight. Harvest tip. Snip leaves about 2 inches above the soil as needed. Harvest often for best flavor and to prevent flowering when you want leaf production. Bonus. The round lavender flowers attract pollinators and make a pretty, edible garnish. Practical uses and storage. Chop fresh into salads, eggs, and soups. They freeze well when mixed with a little oil in an ice cube tray. Quick question. Do you prefer chive snips in your scrambled eggs or on top of a baked potato? 6. Horseradish. The root with serious kick that keeps on coming back. Horseradish is grown from root cuttings rather than seeds, and once it's established, it's famously persistent, which is great if you want a reliable supply, but means you need to give it a dedicated space. Planting basics. Plant root pieces in spring about 2 inches deep and roughly a foot apart in fertile, well-drained soil. Full sun or part shade works. Add compost at planting. Care minimums. Keep the bed weed-free and mulched. It doesn't need much fuss beyond that. Harvest tip. Dig roots in late fall after tops die back for the best flavor and easiest harvest. Important caution. Even small root fragments will regrow, so grown horseradish in a deep container or a dedicated bed isolated from other root crops if you don't want it to take over. Practical uses and storage. Grate fresh into sauces. Mix with vinegar for horseradish sauce or bottle homemade condiments. Roots store well in cool, humid conditions. Quick question. Are you a heat lover who'd grate your horseradish fresh, or would you use it sparingly? 5. Asparagus. The patient perennial that pays off for years. Asparagus is the poster child for plant once, harvest for decades, if you give it a good start. It needs a little patience up front, but a well-established asparagus bed can produce for 15 to 20 years or more. Planting basics. Set crowns in a trench 6 to 8 inches deep, with crowns spaced about 18 inches apart and rows 4 or 5 feet apart. Backfill gradually after roots fill in. Choose a sunny, well-drained site and amend the planting trench with compost. Care minimums. Keep the bed weed-free, especially in the first couple of years, and add a top dressing of compost every year. Don't harvest during the first season and keep harvesting light the second year to let crowns strengthen. Harvest tip. When spears are 6 to 8 inches tall in spring, harvest by snapping or cutting at soil level, but follow the establishment guidelines. Many gardeners wait at least one full season without harvest, and 2 seasons gives the strongest long-term yields. Important caution. Asparagus is a long-term commitment. Don't expect big returns immediately. Practical uses and storage. Grate fresh, blanched and frozen, or pickled. Store short-term wrapped in the fridge and freeze or can for longer storage. Quick question. Would you set aside space for a permanent bed, or try a trial row to see how it performs first? 4. Sorrel. A lemony, tart green that keeps producing. Sorrel is a bright, tangy perennial spinach substitute that tolerates partial shade and returns reliably once planted. Planting basics. Set divisions or plants about 12–18 inches apart in fertile, moist soil. It does well in part sun to full sun, depending on your summer heat. More shade in hot climates helps prevent bolting. Care minimums. Cut back leaves regularly to maintain a steady supply and prevent flowering. Divide clumps every few years to keep plants productive. Harvest tip. Pick the outer leaves when they reach 4 to 6 inches, letting the center leaves continue to grow so the plant keeps producing. Important caution. In hot weather, sorrel can bolt to seed and become bitter. Regular trimming and some shade will help prolong leaf quality. Practical uses and storage. Excellent raw in salads, chopped into soups, or made into sauces and herb butters. Freeze chopped sorrel in oil or vinegar for later use. Quick question. Would you try it in salads or use it cooked in soups and sauces? 3. Globe artichoke. An ornamental edible that makes a statement and keeps giving. Globe artichokes are both beautiful and useful. They behave like a large perennial in milder climates and can return for several seasons when given rich soil and consistent care. Planting basics. Choose a sunny site with deep, rich soil. Space plants about 3 feet apart so crowns have room for a clumping habit. Plant transplants with the crown at soil level and water well to settle roots. Care minimums. Feed with compost or an all-purpose organic amendment in early spring. Keep the soil consistently moist but not waterlogged, and protect crowns in winter with mulch in cooler zones. Harvest tip. Pick tight, firm buds before they open. The immature flower buds are the edible part. If you let them bloom, they make great pollinator magnets but are no longer edible. Important caution. Artichokes can take a couple of seasons to reach full production, so plan for multi-year rewards rather than instant harvests. Practical uses and storage. Steam whole buds and eat the hearts and bases, or harvest smaller buds for a more tender bite. Artichokes can be cooked, canned, or frozen after blanching. Quick question. Would you grow them for fresh eating, or leave some to bloom as pollinator-friendly ornamentals? 2. Blueberries. Perennial shrubs that reward you with fruit and landscape value. Blueberries are attractive, long-lived shrubs that produce fruit for many years when grown in the right soil and with consistent moisture. Planting basics. They need acidic soil. Aim for a pH between about 4.5 and 5.5, so amend soil with acidifying materials like peat moss or pine needle mulch and plant in sunny locations. Space bushes about 4 to 5 feet apart and plant multiple varieties for good cross-pollination and heavier crops. Care minimums: mulch heavily to keep roots cool and moist, water consistently especially during fruit set and dry spells, and add annual top dressings of compost or acid-loving shrub fertilizer in late winter or early spring. Prune in late winter to remove dead wood and shape the bush, encouraging new fruiting wood. Harvest tip: pick when berries are fully blue and come off the stem with a gentle twist. Taste is the best indicator of ripeness. Important caution: they need consistent moisture and the right pH, otherwise yields and plant health suffer. Practical uses and storage: fresh, frozen, baked into pies, or preserved as jams. Freeze in single layers for easy storage. Quick question: do you have acid soil naturally? Or would you try container blueberries where soil can be controlled more easily? Boon walking: Egyptian onions, the near indestructible onion that multiplies itself. Walking onions set small bulblets at the top of their stalks. When those tops bend down, they plant themselves, so one bulb can become a patch in a few seasons. Planting basics: set sets or small bulbs about 6 inches apart in a sunny spot with well-drained soil. They're forgiving about soil fertility, but will benefit from compost at planting. Care minimums: these are very low maintenance. A light feed in spring and regular weeding is usually enough. They tolerate dry periods better than many onion types. Harvest tip: harvest greens early and often as scallions. Harvest bulbs when tops die back in late summer or fall. The top sets can be collected and transplanted to expand the patch. Important caution: walking onions can spread into a substantial clump over several years, which most gardeners love. But if you need strict control, grow them in a container or harvest top sets before they root. Practical uses and storage: use the greens like scallions or the small bulbs for pickling and cooking. They store reasonably well in cool, dry conditions. Quick question: would you grow them as a perpetual green onion source or harvest bulbs each year? A few recurring tips that apply across the board. Prepare permanent beds with good organic matter at planting. Use mulch to suppress weeds and retain moisture. Consider root barriers or containers for plants that spread. And plan permanent locations for long-lived plants like asparagus, rhubarb, and artichokes. Avoid harvesting heavily while plants are still establishing. The long-term yield payoff depends on giving crowns and roots time to build reserves. Also, when I warn about invasiveness or toxicity, I always pair it with a practical solution. Put horseradish and Jerusalem artichokes in big pots or isolated beds, and never eat rhubarb leaves. Let's recap all 9 in one short rundown, from 9 to 1, with a single highlight for each. 9. Rhubarb. Classic tart stalks for pies and preserves. Plant crowns 3 feet apart. 8. Jerusalem artichokes. High-yield tubers that sweeten after frost. Contain or isolate them. 7. Chives. Space-saving herb. Great in pots, cut often. 6. Horseradish. Powerful roots. Plant in a dedicated bed or container. 5. Asparagus. Long-term payoff if you wait while it establishes. Trench crowns 6 to 8 inches deep. 4. Sorrel. Lemony perennial green. Good in partial shade. 3. Globe artichoke. Ornamental edible that can return for years in the right climate. 2. Blueberries. Fruiting shrubs that need acidic soil and steady water. 1. Walking onions. Self-sowing onion that multiplies without fuss. Which 2 should you start with? If you have limited space or containers, chives and walking onions are superb starter perennials that give quick wins and require very little commitment. If you're ready to build a permanent bed and want long-term payoff, choose asparagus and rhubarb. They demand a bit more patience but reward you for decades. If fruit is your goal and you have the right soil, a couple of blueberry bushes will keep giving season after season. Wherever you begin, think scale. Pick a dedicated spot for the sprawling or invasive types, use containers for control, and invest in good soil up front for plants you hope will last. A few final safety and planning reminders. Never eat rhubarb leaves. Plan containment for horseradish, Jerusalem artichokes, and any plant that spreads. And remember that harvest for years depends on climate, soil quality, and care. If you're unsure about variety choices or local pests, your county extension or local nursery can help you pick cultivars suited to your area. If this helped you imagine a garden that pays you back year after year, do me a favor. Like and share this video with a friend who wants more food with less replanting. Check the description for a printable planting checklist, links to starter-friendly varieties by climate, and resources to help you choose the best perennial for your space. Try planting 1 or 2 of these this season, and let me know in the comments which ones you'll start with, container or bed. and what questions you want me to cover next. See you in the next video.